A 747 flying towards South Africa fills with smoke. A fire has erupted in the cargo area, but the plane can't land. It's a race against time as the plane burns up.
On November 28, 1967, the South African Airways Boeing 747, carrying 159 people, vanished over the Indian Ocean. All that was known is that a fire broke out on the plane before it disappeared. Investigators faced a daunting challenge with only a few bodies, limited wreckage, and 100 seconds of damaged cockpit tapes. What caused the fire? What befell the passengers and crew? Why didn't the plane reach land? Many of these questions remain unanswered, wrapped in the mystery of apartheid-era South Africa. This story delves into what we believe happened on South African Airways Flight 295 and the enduring enigma that has sparked decades of speculation from both amateurs and experts. The Boeing 747-200B Combi, which South African Airways received on November 24, 1980, was a versatile aircraft designed for both passengers and cargo, a configuration evident on Flight 295. This dual functionality was particularly significant for South African Airways because of the limitations imposed by apartheid, the racial segregation policy in South Africa at the time. Sanctions prevented the airline from flying over most African airspaces, necessitating longer routes around the continent. The 747s, with their impressive range, proved invaluable in this particular scenario. In 1987, South Africa was under the grip of a severely racist government, enforcing a system of harsh regulation where the rights of Black Africans were denied. This situation turned South Africa into a global outcast, especially among other African nations, leading to highly antagonistic relations. Consequently, numerous countries prohibited South African Airways, the state-owned airline, from traversing their airspace. This compelled the airline to adopt indirect routes to and from a handful of nations where it was permitted to operate. One of these routes was Flight 295, a regular service linking Taipei, Taiwan, and Johannesburg, South Africa, with a stopover on the Indian Ocean island of Mauritius for refueling. This atypical flight path extended far into a remote section of the Indian Ocean, seldom traveled by commercial planes. Leading the flight were Captain Dolly Hughes, First Officer David Atwell, and Flight Engineer Giuseppe Bellagarda. Also on board were Relief First Officer Jeffrey Birchall and Relief Flight Engineer Alan Daniel, along with 14 flight attendants. 6 pallets were loaded at the aircraft's rear, containing computer parts, electronics, paper, textiles, medicine, and sports equipment. A surprise cargo inspection also revealed nothing suspicious or hazardous. Tynus Jacobs, South African Airlines Taiwan manager, noted that the flight crew seemed calm and prepared, displaying no concerns about the cargo, indicating their readiness for the journey. The flight departed from Taiwan's Chiang Kai-shek International Airport at 2:23 p.m. UTC, marking the beginning of the journey's troubles. Less than an hour before the scheduled landing in Mauritius, a smoke alarm blared in the cockpit, indicating a fire in a container located directly behind the passengers in the cargo area. We know all the details from the black box tapes that were recovered after the crash, and now we'll show you the most tragic moments from these recordings that'll send shivers down your spine. But you know the deal, guys. Before we get to that part, we'd like to remind you to give us a thumbs up under the video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for staying with us, and now let's get back to the story. Where were we? Yes, flight attendants rushed to the back to find a fierce fire engulfing the cargo hold. While the flight crew followed the in-flight fire checklist, attendants tried desperately to extinguish the flames using fire extinguishers. Smoke quickly filled the cabin. Meanwhile, the fire reached the control cables of the aircraft, causing short circuits. Passengers, struggling to breathe, were directed to move towards the front of the plane. The nearest airport, Mauritius, was still over 300 kilometers away. Captain Us enlisted the help of a crew member in the cockpit to combat the fire, initiated an emergency descent to 14,000 feet, and declared an emergency to Mauritius Air Traffic Control.
We have a smoke problem, and we're doing emergency descent to level 15140.
Smoke, thickens in the cabin, potentially becoming toxic. The fire damages cockpit wiring, causing electrical failures. The crew, preparing for an emergency landing, attempts to clear the cabin smoke. A crew member reports critical conditions in the lower floor. Passengers struggle to breathe. The situation becomes so serious that the pilots know they might not make it out alive.
Full emergency, please. A full emergency. Affirmative. Charlie. I declare a full emergency. Roger.
Following the checklist, Captain Us is instructed to perform a rare, undesirable maneuver, opening the cabin doors. At this altitude, the pressure difference inside and outside the aircraft is manageable, allowing cabin air to escape without suction. Captain Us reduces airspeed to 200 knots, necessary for door opening. A crew member at the rear opens 2 doors as smoke fills the cockpit. Both runways at the airport are clear, and the air traffic control continues to let the aircraft know all information available. 4 minutes of silence passed before air traffic control made attempts to contact Flight 295. With no response, after a few more tries, the airport officially declared an emergency at 0044 UTC. The aircraft had disappeared at 0008, and investigators determined it disintegrated and fell into the sea at 0007 UTC, equivalent to 4:07 local time. The last recordings from the cockpit show how chaotic the final moments were and how great the panic was on board the craft. Now that we know how the entire disaster unfolded, let's move on to the theories attempting to explain how the fire on board even started. But we've got to warn you, some of these theories are pretty crazy. Okay, some conspiracy theorists claim that the South African government covered up a fire caused by illegal military cargo on board the flight. This theory suggests that classified materials or weapons were being transported and the government wanted to hide their involvement. And in our opinion, this is one of the most fitting explanations, but it's not the only one. Let's listen to some of the others. There are theories suggesting that specific individuals on the flight were targeted for assassination due to political reasons. This speculation often ties back to the apartheid regime and its opponents, with suspicions of foul play in the crash. But would anyone really go so far as to take the lives of more than 150 people for the sake of one? Modern global politics would sadly say yes to that question. Some other theories propose that political dissidents or anti-apartheid activists might have sabotaged the flight to make a statement against the South African government. This theory speculates on the possibility of a deliberate act of destruction. There's also conspiracies suggesting the involvement of foreign entities, including intelligence agencies or terrorist organizations. But these theories often lack concrete evidence. In fact, this case just lacks any real key evidence that would clarify all the circumstances. It's said that crucial evidence related to the crash had been intentionally suppressed. This could potentially include witness testimonies, radar data, or communication recordings that, if revealed, might shed light on the actual cause of the disaster. Also, some critics of the official investigation point to alleged shortcomings, claiming that the inquiry was not really thorough enough. They also argue that crucial leads were not pursued, hindering the discovery of the true cause. Of course, as always, it is possible to talk about pilot error or an undisclosed malfunctioning defect of the aircraft, and these situations simply can't be proven. So it seems that the entire matter will forever remain an unsolved aviation mystery, which will be talked about for a long time to come. And in your opinion, which theory is the most likely? Let us know in the comments below what you think about the case. And if you like our videos, click here to see a few more. And, as always, thank you very much for choosing to spend your time with us today. We'll see you in our next video.